Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities from Italy's Guardia di Finanza say that they have arrested an unidentified drug smuggler this week after he tried to get through one of the country's airports with over $1 million worth of cocaine concealed in his electric wheelchair. According to reports, the situation took place sometime last week when the suspect, identified only as a man from Spain, arrived at the Malpensa airport, located about 25 miles northwest of the city of Milan. The man was using an electric wheelchair to get around and asked for assistance from employees at the airport to help navigate the building because he was disabled. Staff were more than happy to help and reportedly started assisting the man with his luggage until they were stopped by a specialized canine unit who were checking passengers who had arrived at the airport that day. The flight that the man had been on was of particular interest because it had come from the Dominican Republic, a popular smuggling route. When the man approached the checkpoint, police canines alerted them to the presence of drugs. His luggage was searched, but nothing was found. That's when officers cut into the upholstery of his electric wheelchair. Sure enough, inside they found 13 kilograms, or about 29 pounds of cocaine. As if to remove any shadow of a doubt that the whole situation was a con, as soon as the drugs were discovered, the suspect reportedly stood up and began to walk completely unaided. He definitely was not disabled. According to reports, the man now remains in police custody, though it's unclear if charges have been brought against him. The street value of the drugs he was carrying at the time of his arrest had been estimated to be about $1.4 million. Authorities in the west of Germany say that a 28-year-old prisoner is dead this week after he crashed a stolen vehicle while fleeing police, following his escape from an open prison. According to reports, the incident began sometime on September 5th, when the 28-year-old, who has not been identified by name, fled an open prison in the German state of Baden-Württemberg. At the time, he had reportedly been granted day release. A pursuit began when police were notified that the 28-year-old had hijacked a car at gunpoint in Mannheim, a city about 40 miles south of Frankfurt. He forced the female driver to get onto a nearby highway before leaving her stranded at a rest stop and continuing on alone. He later caused a crash involving several vehicles, stealing another car when a man stopped to offer help to the victims. After that, the 28-year-old continued on, driving over the border into France as police continued their pursuit. The chase finally came to an end somewhere near the French town of Nancy, when the 28-year-old reportedly caused a second, more serious incident on the road. The resulting head-on collision ended with the prisoner being declared dead at the scene. At the time of this recording, few other details are available about the case. It's unclear what the 28-year-old was in prison for in the first place, and it has not been revealed how he managed to obtain the firearm that he used in the carjackings. Authorities say that they are still investigating. Authorities in the Australian state of Queensland say that a 16-year-old boy is facing murder charges this week after he allegedly stabbed a 42-year-old man to death inside of a residence. According to reports, the incident began just before midnight on September 7th, when police were called to a house on Toyne Street in the Sunshine Coast suburb of Baringa. They arrived to find a 42-year-old man suffering from multiple stab wounds to the chest and abdomen. Emergency responders attempted to save the man's life, but shortly after, he was pronounced dead at the scene. When police questioned the two other people at the property, a 16-year-old boy and his mother, they learned that the stabbing had been the result of a, quote, physical altercation between the teenager and the 42-year-old victim. The teen was arrested and has now been charged with murder. While many of the circumstances surrounding the violent incident currently remain a mystery, authorities say that the 16-year-old and the 42-year-old knew one another. The exact nature of their relationship is reportedly still under investigation, though police say that the victim was an associate of the teen's mother, but was not the boy's stepfather. It's unclear if the 42-year-old was living in the house with the teenager and his mother, which has been described as a rental property. Neighbors say that they heard the sounds of loud arguing at the time of the attack, followed by piercing screams. At the time of this recording, neither the victim nor the teenager have been identified by name. The investigation continues. Authorities in the Indian Union Territory of Puducherry say that a 13-year-old boy is dead this week after the jealous mother of one of his classmates secretly gave him a drink laced with poison. According to reports, the incident began sometime on Friday, September 2nd, when a 13-year-old boy named Bala Manikandan returned home from school in the town of Karaikal and told his mother that he wasn't feeling right. He said that he was drowsy and nauseous, and soon after began to vomit. His parents took him to the doctor, where he was briefly examined but then allowed to return home. The next day, Bala's symptoms continued to get worse, and he eventually slipped into a coma. Sadly, he would be pronounced dead later that night. Before Bala died, however, he managed to give his parents a vital clue as to what had happened to him. He explained that he had first started to feel sick after consuming the drinks that his mother had sent for him at school on Friday. This was chilling news to Bala's mother, because she had not sent any drinks to the school. She soon realized that her son had been poisoned. When police investigated the case, they discovered that the poisoned drinks had been delivered to the school by another woman, later identified through CCTV footage as 42-year-old Sagayarani Victoria. She had given the beverages to one of the school's security guards, telling them that they had been sent for Bala by his mother. Authorities now allege that Sagayarani poisoned Bala because she was jealous that he was constantly outperforming her daughter in school. The two were apparently classmates who had a bitter rivalry over marks and grades, which in the past had resulted in a number of petty disputes. Sagayarani reportedly got so upset over the issue that she reportedly tried to get Bala out of the way permanently. At the time of this recording, Sagayarani has been arrested and remains in police custody. The case is still developing. Authorities in the Japanese city of Tachikawa say that a 44-year-old man has been arrested this week after he recently tried to burn down a bar because he was told to leave other customers alone. According to reports, the incident took place sometime between 3:30 and 4 a.m. on August 27th, after the unidentified bar had closed down for the night. That's when 44-year-old Takahiro Ishii allegedly doused the business's front door and wall with a flammable liquid and set it on fire. Thankfully, no one was hurt, and the fire actually went out by itself, though not before destroying part of the bar's exterior. Ishii was later identified thanks to video surveillance footage in the area that reportedly caught him in the act of starting the fire. Following his arrest, Ishii initially tried to save face, telling police, quote, "I might have done it, but I was drunk and don't have any recollection of starting a fire." However, he eventually admitted the bizarre motive behind the crime. Apparently, earlier that evening, a female employee at the bar had told him that none of the other customers there wanted to talk to him, and that he should stop bothering them. Given his reaction to the comment, it's probably safe to say that the customers who didn't want to talk to Ishii likely had a good reason. Representatives from the Spanish Civil Guard say that they have arrested 5 people this week after a 30-year-old woman allegedly staged her kidnapping with the help of several accomplices in order to extort money from her own mother. According to reports, the incident began at the end of last week when authorities on the Spanish island of Tenerife were notified about an unusual withdrawal from a woman's bank account. The woman had taken out the equivalent of $50,000 US in cash. When police contacted the woman, she explained that her 30-year-old daughter, who has not been identified by name, had been kidnapped. She then showed them a chilling video that she had received from the alleged culprits. In the video, the woman's daughter was blindfolded and sobbing. She appeared to have blood coming out of one of the corners of her mouth, and an unknown man wearing gloves had a large knife held to her neck. Through tears, the 30-year-old pleaded with her mother to pay her kidnappers, saying that she had been beaten and abused, and it would be the only way she would see her alive again. Though the mother was understandably terrified, when detectives started to look into the situation, they weren't convinced. In particular, they started to become suspicious of her daughter's boyfriend and his family. Sure enough, within 24 hours, police had solved the case. This wasn't a kidnapping, it was an extortion attempt, and the supposed victim was in on it. In fact, at the time that police arrested the 30-year-old woman, her boyfriend, and 3 of his family members, they were all hanging out together at a local arcade. When police searched the boyfriend's home, they found several items that had allegedly been used to stage the fake kidnapping, including a handkerchief, a bottle of fake blood, and a large knife. As if the situation couldn't get any worse, police now say that this isn't the first time the group of suspects has extorted the 30-year-old's mother. On at least 3 separate occasions, they allegedly sent letters to her claiming that her daughter would be killed, and she ended up paying them amounts totaling roughly $45,000 US. At the time of this recording, all 5 of the suspects are reportedly facing charges for faking a crime and extortion. If convicted, they could be looking at up to 6 years in prison. Authorities in Ireland say that they are investigating a tragic and truly horrific triple murder case this week after 3 young siblings were killed in their home during a terrifying knife attack. According to reports, the incident began at around 3 a.m. on September 4th, when police were called to a residence in the Dublin suburb of Tallaght. They arrived to find 3 members of the same family dead, each with multiple stab wounds. The victims were subsequently identified as 8-year-old twins Chelsea and Christy Cawley and their older sister, 18-year-old Lisa Cash. As if the case couldn't get any darker, police soon announced the identity of the suspect allegedly behind the vicious attacks. It was another of the victim's siblings, 24-year-old Andy Cash. Authorities now say that at the time of the murders, the twins were being looked after by their older sister. At some point, the 24-year-old reportedly arrived at the residence by taxi and attacked those inside. Neighbors said that they heard screaming and shouting as the horrific violence unfolded. A 14-year-old boy, who is said to be another of the siblings of the victims, managed to survive by jumping out of a window during the attack. He was reportedly taken to the hospital with undisclosed injuries, which some reports state included a broken leg. At the time of this recording, Andy Cash has been charged with murder, though few other details about the case, including the alleged motive behind the killings, have been released. The situation is still developing. Thousands of people across Argentina are rallying in support of the country's vice president this week after she narrowly avoided an attempt on her life when her would-be assassin's weapon failed to fire. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on the evening of September 1st when the 69-year-old vice president, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, was outside of her home greeting a large crowd of supporters. As she was signing autographs and engaging with those who had come to see her, all of a sudden, a handgun emerged out of the crowd. It was being held by a man who was pointing it at her only a couple of feet away. Because of the amount that was going on around her, Fernández de Kirchner initially did not appear to notice the threat, and was seen continuing to talk with people before momentarily ducking down to the ground to grab something that she had dropped. However, the people around her did see the gunman, and several people started to block him and shield the vice president. She was removed from the area without injury. When the commotion was finally over, police had placed the alleged gunman under arrest and were reportedly able to recover the weapon that had been used in the crime. The gunman has now been identified as 35-year-old Fernando Andrés Sabaj Montiel, a Brazilian-born man with an Argentine mother who came to the country as a child in 1993. At the time of this recording, it's unclear why Montiel's gun failed to fire, though several sources state that he did attempt to shoot and that the weapon was loaded when it was recovered by police. Authorities say that Montiel's 23-year-old girlfriend, Brenda Uliarte, has also been arrested in connection with the attempted murder. They allege that she helped Montiel to plan the crime and that she was in the area when it unfolded. It's unclear exactly what evidence investigators have against her, though. No motive behind the crime has been confirmed at the time of this recording, though some sources we came across reported that Montiel has a prior criminal record, and at least one Argentine news outlet alleged that he has some association with far-right political groups in the country. However, this remains speculation. It's worth pointing out that the vice president herself is a fairly controversial figure within Argentina. She formerly served as the president from 2007 to 2015, and as the first lady before that, and is currently in the midst of fighting corruption charges against her. She is accused of defrauding the state and of fraudulently awarding public works contracts during her time as president, and this is not the first time such allegations have emerged. The reason crowds had gathered outside of her house in the first place on the evening of the attempt on her life was to show support for her during her fight against these current charges. That case is still expected to take a few more months and could result in Fernandez de Kirchner receiving a 12-year prison sentence and a lifetime ban from holding office. However, reports also state that she might actually be immune from imprisonment because of her position within government. In either case, at the time of this recording, this week's incident is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.